Good afternoon and welcome to today's session on property matters, brought to you by Ascent Reality and supported by Ascent Radio. My name is Destiny Unuate Ijebo. As we always do, we'll begin today with a little story. Last week we talked about property management. Also today we are continuing this series on property management. Today's topic is property management, illegal practices you should avoid. Property management, illegal practices you should avoid. Now, our discussion today centers around a property owner or a property manager. So there are some persons who are the property owners and they also act as managers, while there are others who act as managers only. So we are going to be focusing on property managers today. As we always do, we'll begin by telling a little story. Now, today we have Mr. Raola Ojukwu, a retired teacher who has been considering different options that he could go into in order to make more money while he has retired from active service. Now, he has a friend who has been into real estate business, and the person has told him, okay, this is a very profitable business that I've been in for some years and I've made good money from this transaction, and the person's name here is Mr. Falomo Osaji. He has told him testimonies of things that he has been able to achieve through the real estate business, particularly property management. But however, Mr. Raola is skeptical because he has heard series of complaints that tenants have made against property managers, and he wants to know those things that he can avoid, those activities that are illegal in nature that he should avoid while he ventures into property management. So today that will form our discussion. This is for our discussion today, what you need to avoid as a property manager. Things that are illegal, you could be sued for it if you continue to work in that particular direction. Now, being a property manager comes with lots of responsibilities. It is not enough for you to say, okay, I'm a property manager because there is money in this industry, that's why I'm going into it. You should also know that you have responsibilities that you owe to both the tenants and the property owner. All of these things you must put into consideration while you are managing properties. There are lots of persons, property managers, who go on to manage property. They are not really interested in the welfare of the occupants of the property. They are not interested in the property that they are managing, how the property is faring, is the property in good condition. They don't care about any of those things. And sometimes they don't put into consideration how the tenants will feel when they carry out certain activities or they take certain actions or make certain decisions. They don't really put the interest of the tenant at heart when making all of these decisions. So as a property manager, you must ensure that when you are making decisions or you are taking any action, you consider both sides. How am I going to protect the interest of my tenant? How am I going to protect the interest of the property owner while still making maximum profits? So this is what you should be looking at in today's discussion. Now, first thing you must note is that entering into a property without due notice, it is illegal for you to go into a property because you're a property manager to go into a premises that you have given out to a tenant without giving the person due notice. It is tantamount to barging into the person's privacy. One of the things you have when you are giving out a property to a tenant is that the tenant will have peaceful possession of the property. And if you are giving out a property to someone, if the person does not have full right over the property for the period for which the person has paid for, or the term that has been agreed, let's say you have agreed that the person will be in the property for a period of 5 years, but you keep going into the property without notice to the occupants, that amounts to trespass, and it is illegal for you to barge into that property without having recourse to the interest of the person who occupies the property. Now, what way can you salvage this situation? What can you do to avoid being caught up by the arms of the law. You have to ensure that you give proper notice to the occupier or the tenant in the property. Usually, in the contracts which establish a relationship between you and the tenant, is usually stated there in the tenancy agreement or lease agreement that you are to come into the property having given due notice, proper notice to the tenant. Let's say 24 hours, usually the period that is given to the tenant that you are coming into the property for the purpose of inspection. Now, when you are writing that letter or giving that notice, you must state clearly what you are coming into the property to do. This will help you not to be at any breach of the person's rights that the person has to enjoy when it comes to property management. Then what other thing you should also need to put into consideration is charging more rent in the middle of a lease. Now, let's say the parties have agreed that the lease or the rental period will be for a period of 3 years. If it has been agreed that, okay, this term is for 3 years and the amount payable per term is 1,000 naira. Now, if it has been agreed that 1,000 is paid per annum for a particular property that you have rented out as a property manager, and you decide to increase the rent, maybe the person has spent a year and a half in the property, you decide to increase it because you believe you need to make more money from it, it is illegal for you to increase the rent or the lease at the middle of the term that is granted. So one way you can cure all of this is to either make it clear in the lease agreement that the term or the rent will be reviewed annually. Now, if you insert this clause that the rent will be reviewed annually, it will also state there the length of notice you have to give to the tenant if there is any need for you to review that rent. Now, if you have failed to give notice to that tenant, it means therefore you cannot review the rent during that particular period. You have to wait till the next year when you can validly review the rent. So when you fail to give proper notice that you want to review the rental value or the rental payments or that particular property, therefore you will run foul of the law if you decide to increase it while the rent is still running. So you must ensure that you bridge this gap by giving due notice or signing a particular clause that states this is the length of notice that the tenant is entitled to. Now, if you are giving the tenant that notice that is required under the agreement, the tenant cannot say you have breached or you have violated his rights under the agreement. That's one thing you also need to note. Then the third thing you have to note as a property manager in order to run foul of the law is eviting a current tenant due to sale. Now, one thing that many property owners and managers do is they sell property at the middle of a lease. Let's say you are giving out a property to a certain tenant and the lease you have granted the person is to run for a period of 5 years. After a year and 6 months into the lease, you decide to sell the property. You now want to evict the tenants forcefully. It is an illegal act. So you must ensure you reach a compromise with the tenants. If the tenant has paid full amount for the entire duration, you have the option of refunding whatever the tenant has not spent in the property. And now, if it happens also that the tenant has made repairs with your consent, you also need to state, okay, I am going to refund whatever you have spent on this property. This is a way you can avoid having any legal issues with your tenants. If you decide to engage the tenant in a legal battle, it may last years, and the profit which you intend to make from the sale of the property, you will not enjoy that. So you must ensure that you reach an agreement with the tenant if you want to sell the property that the tenant currently occupies. Another thing is not getting proper inspection to the tenant. Now, what most property managers do, when they know that the property they want to give out doesn't meet the expectation, or because the tenant has told them, the prospective tenant in this case has told them, this is what I want to use this property for, Now, if the prospective tenant has told you, okay, this is what I want to use the property for, you need to allow the tenant to inspect the property to see that the property is fit for the purpose for which he wants to use it for. When you fail to do this and the tenant goes into the apartment and finds out that the property falls short of what he has discussed with you, that is an illegal act which you have committed, and you could be liable for an action in tort for breach of contract. Now, one way you can avoid this is to give the tenant ample opportunity to inspect the property. If the tenant has inspected the property and he says, okay, the property is good to go, and he has seen the defects in the property, he decides to go on with the contract, therefore you cannot be held liable for any acts that the tenant may allege maybe during the tenancy. So you must have done your part by giving the tenant opportunity to see in and out of the property, and you allow him or her to make the final decision whether he wants to go on with the transaction or not. If you have done that, it means you have fulfilled all righteousness. You cannot be held liable for anything that goes wrong in the property transaction. Now, another thing you also need to look at if you really want to avoid running foul of the law is you can't charge too much for a security. Now, what does this mean? Many persons usually charge, okay, you are going to deposit this certain amount as security. Some persons, they have different terms that they use to describe this particular subject in different jurisdictions. Now, some persons will say, okay, you are going to deposit this certain amount as security in case of any damage to the property. Now, if you have deposited a certain amount as security, it means if nothing happens to the property at the end of the day, you have the right to record that amount, and the landlord or the property manager will refund that certain amount to you. But you have seen cases where the property managers or the property owners, they tend to charge in excess of the value of the property. Ordinarily, the amount you are to be charged shouldn't exceed 10% or something around that region. But some persons may, because they want to use the money to transact other businesses, they may decide to charge up to 40% as security deposit. That is not proper. If you do this, the tenant can bring an action against you for breach of his rights in this circumstance. So you must ensure that whatever you are charging is within the ambit of the law. And the tenant can also decide to report it to appropriate authority, and they have stated that, okay, this is the amount you can charge. This is 30% you can charge for any property that you are giving out as security. When you go beyond that, the tenant has the option of reporting you to the appropriate authority. You can also report you to the property owner so that this is what the property manager is charging. So for you as a property manager to avoid being tossed around through different means, you need to ensure that you abide by the law. Ensure that you follow what is clearly stated in the tenancy agreement that you are issuing out to this prospective tenant. Another thing you also need to do is you cannot refuse to make repairs. This is one area where many property managers tend to dodge responsibilities. Now, as a property manager, you have the duty to maintain the premises which you are letting out to tenants. Though you are not the direct owner of the property, you act as agent to the owner. If the property occupiers, the tenants, want to make any request, they make the request to you, and you in turn makes it to the property owner. Now, when there is any defect in the property or any part needs a replacement, you have the duty to repair such property. Now, if you fail to make necessary repairs to the property and the tenant gets injured as a result of your failure to make repairs, and the person that's giving you due notice as required under the tenancy agreement, which binds both parties, you are liable for any damage that the person has suffered. If the person has suffered injury, you are going to be liable for that. So to avoid being liable for any of these things, you must ensure that you make repairs when necessary. You also need to ensure that you don't wait until the damage is so huge that you now want to use the entire sum that the tenant has paid as rent to make repairs. As things are coming up, you fix them. That will make things easy for you and also easy for the property owner, as well as the tenant who occupies the property, who will not have to suffer much damage, both emotional, physical, and otherwise, because it's a tenant in the property which you manage. And another thing is, you cannot ask for a rent increase just because there is an increase in other things in the society. Let's take, for instance, recently, I think about a month ago, there was a hike in fuel prices because there was scarcity of fuel. You cannot say, okay, because prices of products in the market have increased, I am going to increase my rent on the property you occupy. No, that shouldn't be the case. You cannot increase the rent on a property because the inflation has gone far beyond what you had imagined. Now, one way you can also curb this situation is to insert that rent review clause in that rental agreement you have signed with your tenant. Now, this rental review clause states how you can review the rent. I've also stated this earlier. If it has been clearly stated that, okay, you can review rent as social points and social points, it therefore means if inflation is taking place, you know that, okay, once it gets to this month of the year, I can review the rent to reflect the current economic realities. So you must ensure that you follow the due process whenever you want to make any increments in the rents reserved in that lease agreement you have entered with your tenants. What other thing you also need to look at is you cannot retaliate against a tenant just the same proportion which he has added. Now, some tenants can be very annoying. They can act in such a way you find to be irrational, and they can act in a way that are unprovoked, and you start thinking, what does it tenant take me for? Does it mean that, okay, I cannot act or I cannot react to his actions? No, you shouldn't act that way. Some tenants are out just to provoke you because they know that they have the backing of the law. If you look through the tenancy laws of the various states, they tend to protect the tenants more because they believe that the tenant is fragile in any tenancy agreement that you are entering. So you must ensure that you guide yourself against any liabilities that the tenant may bring against you because you have reacted the same proportion that he has acted towards you. So you must learn how to curtail all of these excesses of the tenants within the ambits of the law. So as a property manager, you should try as much as possible not to react in the same way that a tenant has acted, because when you do this, not many persons will be ready to listen to the other side of the story. They are quick to jump into conclusion when they hear what the tenant has suffered. The tenant will not be ready to tell whatever he or she has done that warranted your reaction. So you should ensure you take legal steps to redress whatever issue you have with your tenant. So in summary, you must ensure that as a property manager, you take all interests into consideration when you are making any decision, be it rental increments, property maintenance, and all of that. You must consider the interest of the property owner, the interest of the tenants, and your own interest. You shouldn't go on pursuing your personal needs when it comes to property management. Your profit, the property owner, but in your bid to get more money, you shouldn't run foul of the law. That's how far we can go in today's session. I hope you have been able to learn something that will help improve your career as a property manager and also a prospective tenant or property owner, as the case may be. Follow us on all our social media platforms so you can get to learn more of this property management series that we are on. Next week, we'll be talking about something else that is also related to this particular topic on how best you can maximize profit in your property. Thank you very much. My name again is Destiny Onuati Ijibo. Thanks for joining us.